The Phoenix Suns' 2010's decade was the worst in franchise history. They experienced 7 losing seasons with an overall decade record of 326 and 478. They only made one postseason appearance now a full decade ago in the year 2010. It has been rough, but now things are finally looking up as this past year's team barely missed the playoffs by half a game. The future is finally looking bright. But in this video, I want to take a look back at the previous draft picks the team had and give my thoughts on how they turned out. Obviously, most of it was not well. Before we get going, please comment your thoughts on the Phoenix Suns drafting history or your favorite team's recent draft picks. Also, like the video as it helped me out way more than you may realize. Now, let us get started. In 2010, coming off a successful postseason run where the team pushed the Kobe Bryant-led LA Lakers to the limit in the Western Conference Finals, the Suns only owned 2 draft picks, both second-rounders. You will notice as we go through this video, the Suns rarely have many useful draft picks. This is because of owner Robert Sarver being notoriously cheap, and the previous general manager Ryan McDonough being horrible at his job. In 2010, with the 46th pick, the team selected Gani Lawal. I really feel bad for him. As a second-round pick, upperclassman, tweener, playing on a playoff-chasing team, there was not a lot of opportunity coming his way. He would only appear in one game with the Suns, playing 2 minutes of garbage time, and recording a single foul. Then, shortly thereafter, he would tear his ACL and get waived. He would never be seen on an NBA roster again. Lawal has bounced around a lot since 2010. As of today, he has appeared on at least 27 different professional teams around the globe. You cannot really be too upset with the 46th overall pick not turning out, but you can be a little disappointed. Their second pick was the final pick of that year's draft. As 60th overall, they chose Dwayne Collins. He was another upperclassman, undersized big with little upside. He did not even make the opening night roster, which sucked since this was before the D-League really took off, so players like him who were drafted but could not be squeezed onto an NBA roster were just dumped. Collins attempted to play professionally in Europe, but injured his knee and was apparently MIA for 3 years before being invited to play with the Suns in the Summer League of 2013, where he did next to nothing once again and was let go, then apparently retired. I feel bad for the guy. So in the end, 2010 was not a good year for the Phoenix Suns in the draft. Though both picks were very low, I give the team an F, mostly because of their scouting and player development failing completely. In 2011, the Suns were decently competitive, but missed the playoffs, which resulted in them owning the 13th overall pick. This was only their second lottery selection since 2004. With this pick, they chose Markieff Morris, a power forward with a modest outside shot and could put the ball on the floor decently. But he was very poor on the defensive end, and he was almost a non-factor when it came to rebounding. Morris, honestly, was as good as he could have ever been with the Suns. 3 years in, he was playing big minutes with a big role on a team trying to win games. I blame his shortcomings on head coach Alvin Gentry, who I'm convinced is not actually a good coach. He's just been around for a really long time. Morris is a shooter who can create modestly, but he was consistently being played out of position in the center slot late in games, and his inability to rebound cost the team on many occasions. In 2016, following the trade of his twin brother, Morris was dealt away to begin several years of mediocrity around the league. When I was younger, I was not a fan of the guy, but now I get it. The Suns' higher-ups suck, and he hated that. The only good thing that came for him in Arizona was his role on an NBA team being the highest it would ever be. After leaving, he fell out of starting lineups, then out of rotations completely. But he did just win a championship with the Lakers and had himself a couple very impactful games during their run, so I have to give him props for that. Overall, this draft gets a C. We had a few fun years with Morris, then traded him away for 4 games of Chris Humphries. Going into 2012, the Suns were still a purgatory team fighting to get back into the playoffs. So they received the 13th pick and nothing more, which is twice in a row that this happened. This draft was all over the place in quality, with many busts throughout, which at least made the Suns picking Kendall Marshall look less embarrassing. Marshall is a guy nobody talks about anymore. He was a well-respected player in college thanks to his ability to orchestrate an offense and shoot the long ball, even with his limited athletic ability. And when I say limited athletic ability, I mean it. The guy was 6'4" and could barely dunk a basketball. It is rare that this happens, but NBA scouts admired his skills so much that they overlooked his poor athleticism, which became a problem in the NBA. Marshall could not get on the court thanks to his defense, which ranged from nothing special to poor, and his awful shooting stroke. After 1 year, he was traded away along with a whole slew of other players in a salary dump. He had one somewhat noteworthy year with a bad Lakers team, then bounced around the league a few more times before calling it quits in 2017. Marshall unfortunately did not have what it took to be an NBA point guard in a league that was growing faster by the year. But I am confident that if he wanted to, he could have made a career for himself in Europe. His playstyle fits those leagues much better, but instead he chose to retire early and take on a career in coaching, which I think he will do very well in. He is a smart basketball player, just not an NBA player. This draft gets another F for the team, as once again, the Suns got nothing. 2013 was the year the Suns franchise took a steep nosedive to a pitiful 25 wins. As a consolation prize for their mediocrity, they were awarded the 5th overall pick, but also owned 2 possibly useful picks later on. Hopes were high for the team, but of course, this was 2013. Everyone except the Milwaukee Bucks had a bad draft. With the 5th pick, the team selected Alex Len, a 20-year-old center from Ukraine. Len was never a consistent player with the Suns, and again, I blame this on the team's higher-ups. He was often bounced back and forth between being a bench scrub and being a focal point on the offense. A lot of people would say Len lacked confidence, but I do not agree with this. He was confident, but the role he was given on the floor was wrong, and everyone around him, including the team's broadcast crew, micromanaged everything he did on the floor. Len was a really good rebounder and rim protector, but was used first and foremost for his offense by head coach Alvin Gentry, which was stupid. After Len inevitably showed he could not single-handedly drop 10 points in the first half, he would be yanked off the court and barely see the second half of games. This is where those dreaded offensive rebounds would come, given up by Markieff Morris at center. In 2018, his last year with the team, Len, at 24 years of age, averaged 13 rebounds per 36 minutes. This ranked him 8th in the league. Plus, he shot 56% from the field. I am not saying Len is or could have been as good as Rudy Gobert, but that was the role he was designed for. Yet the team wanted him to be Shaq and force-fed him the ball on the block over and over again, which made him look really bad. I really hope Len eventually finds a functional team that uses him properly. The 30th pick was used on a man named Nemanja Nedovic, who immediately was dealt in a somewhat smart move because he barely played in the NBA. The Suns received the 29th pick, Archie Goodwin. Goodwin, like a few guys we are talking about today, is deserving of his own What Happened To video. So I'm going to give you guys the SparkNotes version here. Goodwin entered the league too young, rotted away on the bench as the team overperformed in 2014. Then the Suns drafted his replacement the very next year, amplifying how little he meant to them. He learned a new position to get on the floor, had a few spectacular moments, then demanded a trade. Little did he know, nobody in the league really wanted him, so he was waived. After a very uneventful 2017 season, he was out of the NBA. He has since been bouncing around the G League and overseas, but as of today is still looking for an NBA comeback. The 57th pick was used on Alex Oriaki, an undersized, upper-class big man who failed to make the team, but has put together a career for himself overseas. This draft sucked. I grade it a D. Like I briefly mentioned earlier, the Suns overachieved in 2014 and won an impressive 48 games. But as a Western Conference team, this still equaled the lottery. They owned 4 picks in that summer's draft, their most since 1994. Their first selection was at 14th overall, electing to take TJ Warren. Warren had a slow and organic growth within the NBA. Unlike other lottery picks in recent years on the Suns, he was not thrown to the wolves immediately. He backed up PJ Tucker early on and truly had to earn his minutes. I do not mean to toot my own horn too much, but I recognized Warren's scoring ability before any of you listening to this. Back in 2016, it became apparent he was the greatest under-the-rim finisher in the NBA. It seemed that no matter the situation, the player defending him, or the angle, if he drove to the hoop, it was going to score 2 points. The only issue is he really did not do much on the floor other than score. Personally though, I did not have an issue with his off-ball woes. In 2019, Warren averaged 18 a game on a 48-42 shooting split, which is spectacular. But he was often injured with bizarre ailments and as a result never appeared in more than 66 games. In the end, Robert Sarver did what he does best and he gave up Warren for cash considerations. It is absolutely disgusting that this man is allowed to own a team. The Suns' second pick was 18th overall, used on Tyler Ennis. Ennis was the 5th string point guard on a roster with 3 other point guards vying for all-star nods. Obviously, he was not going to see the floor often. After only 8 games, the Suns sent him to Milwaukee in exchange for another borderline all-star point guard after their 3-headed attack imploded. Ennis hung around the league for a total of 4 years before playing his last game in 2018. Last year he played in the G League but has since taken his talents overseas. With the 27th pick, the Suns landed an absolute steal, one of the best picks value-wise they could have ever asked for. They drafted Bogdan Bogdanovic, the guy who has averaged 15 points, 3 assists a game, shooting a 44-37 split primarily as a 6th man. The only downside is he never played for the Suns. After they drafted him, they never bought out his Euro contract. And then when he was finally going to come stateside 2 years later, they traded him for a future pick. Absolutely awful. And the last pick of this draft was at 50th overall, choosing Alec Brown. Think Diet Frank Kaminsky. He never played with the team beyond a single summer league. I give this draft a D. Despite the good feelings that came during the 2014 season, in 2015 the team fell short, missing the playoffs again and landing a lottery pick in the process, along with a single second-round pick. With the 13th overall pick, the team chose the future face of the franchise, Devin Booker, a player I do not talk much about on this channel, but he is deserving of way more. Booker has risen to become, in my opinion, at least a top 20 player in the NBA, and honestly, I would say top 10, but I know most of you do not agree with that. Every season, some aspect of his game has improved. His deep shooting is really good. The only downside for most of his career was the fact that he was forced to single-handedly take a lot of tough off-the-dribble deep shots, hurting his efficiencies. But at a career 35% from deep, with an overall field goal percentage up to nearly 49% this past season and a 91% foul shot, Booker has become one of the most reliable scorers in the sport. But along with his 26 points per game, he also handles the ball and displays court vision and a basketball IQ, like some of the sport's best point guards, seeing him average 6 assists a game each of the past 2 years. He deservingly made his first All-Star appearance this past year at only 23 years of age, becoming the first Phoenix Suns drafted and developed player since Amari Stoudemire over a decade earlier to do so. We are 5 going on 6 years into his NBA career, and the team has him locked down through 2024. They need to keep building off of what they did in the bubble and compete in the playoffs, but we will see what happens. Oh, and they drafted his teammate from Kentucky, Andrew Harrison, at 44th overall on draft night, but immediately traded him for a single decent year from John Lure. Does anyone remember him? The Suns get an A from this draft. If you thought the 2015 Suns fell short with their 39 wins, then allow me to introduce you to the 2016 team and their 23 wins. This team sucked, but as a result they were awarded 2 lottery picks, a 3rd first rounder and an early second rounder. A lot of value was expected here. With the 4th pick, they chose Dragan Bender, the youngest player in the draft. I made a whole video about Bender a couple months ago and I'm very proud of it, so I suggest you guys check it out for more detail, link down below. But to make it short, Bender was the most timid top 4 pick I have ever seen. People say Len lacked confidence, but Bender was the true culprit. He shot the ball poorly and did very little on either end of the floor for 3 years, and then he was let go. He then played sparingly with the Bucks and Warriors, but now sees himself returning to Europe at only 23 years of age. I hope Bender figures it out because he definitely can do special things on the court. He just has to get out of his own head. With the 13th pick, the Suns selected Georges Papagiannis, another Euro big man, but they immediately sent him to the Sacramento Kings along with the rights to Bogdan Bogdanovic and their 28th pick later in the draft, Skal Labissière. That's 3 picks in exchange for the 8th pick, Markieff Morris. Papagiannis was a bust and only 2 years into his NBA career was flat out cut from the Kings roster. Labissière has hung around the NBA up till now and I think belongs on a roster as a backup forward, but honestly, he has not done anything special. Chris, meanwhile, was given a lot of opportunity in Phoenix. After an okay rookie season where he showed signs of a possible deep shot and defensive prowess, Chris entered his second season out of shape and poorly performed most of the year. He was sent away that offseason for half a year of Ryan Anderson and a future rookie we will talk about later. Chris maintains a roster spot in the NBA to this day at the very least, but I am not sure if when the 2020 season begins, he will still be a Warrior. Lastly, the 34th pick of the draft, the Suns chose Tyler Ulis, who I really liked and respected. The guy was 5'9" and the lightest player in the league at only 160 pounds. But had proven to the world he belonged at Kentucky and then the NBA, even with less than stellar speed and athleticism. Ulis played randomly for 2 years, sometimes starting and playing big minutes, sometimes only in the closing seconds of a blowout. But he had his moments and I enjoyed watching them. After his second year, he was let go, but was able to hang around the NBA by playing with preseason and G League teams the past couple of years. This draft had a lot to be excited about going in, but flopped hard. I give it an F. In 2017, the Suns sucked again, and were awarded 3 picks for their time. Beginning with the 4th selection, the team chose Josh Jackson. Jackson was an ultra-athletic 19-year-old with a cool-looking afro. Like Bender and Chris earlier, he was thrown to the Wolves immediately and as a result went through some growing pains right before everyone's eyes. His athleticism impressed, but his actual basketball skills left a lot to be desired. However, I do not think Jackson is some horrible bust. He averaged double-digit scoring his first 2 seasons in the league, along with an exceptional ability to pass, though he did not show it often. And his defense is perfectly fine. He just really sucks at shooting, and he turns the ball over a bit too much thanks to his tunnel vision. What did him in with the Suns, interestingly enough though, was his repeated off-court team violations and legal trouble. In college, he was charged with vandalism after threatening a woman outside a bar, then vandalizing her car. He entered an anger management diversion program as a result. In the NBA, almost immediately in October of his rookie season, he was fined for making a gesture as if he were firing a gun into the crowd and cursing at hecklers. He later no-showed a meet and greet event held by the Suns for fans. Later, during the 2019 offseason, he was arrested for trespassing a concert by sneaking into a VIP area, then fleeing arrest. Then only a month later, he was arrested after getting his 5-month-old daughter high on marijuana. Needless to say, the Suns did not like the way he represented them, so they traded him for next to nothing. Worthless. Jackson's basketball ability is slowly improving, but even the Memphis Grizzlies are hesitant to keep him on their team. With the 32nd pick, the Suns drafted Devon Reed, an upperclassman 3-and-D specialist who was expected to have value immediately, but an injury kept him off the floor for most of the year, and when healthy, he just underperformed and was dumped for nothing. The last pick of this year's draft was 54th overall Alec Peters, a stretch 4 who did not have a whole lot to offer to an NBA team, but did have one really good game in his final game. A win against the Dallas Mavericks where he dropped 36 points with 9 rebounds, connecting on 8 threes. He was let go immediately afterwards. This draft sucked again. I give it an F. 2 awful drafts in a row led to the Suns owning the #1 pick in 2018, along with 3 other selections and an extra rookie from a trade earlier. I made a whole 11-minute video on the Suns' only #1 overall pick, DeAndre Ayton, about 2 months ago, so please check it out, link down below. I like Ayton, and I am confident he can be an all-star as soon as within the next 3 years, especially if the team continues to trend upwards. But most people are quick to point out Luka Doncic and Trae Young, selected after him, are definitely better players as of now. You are not wrong, but we will see how that goes this year. With the 16th pick, the Suns chose Zaire Smith, then immediately traded him in a brilliant move to acquire Mikal Bridges, an excellent 3-and-D specialist who made Devon Reed expendable. Bridges is a quiet steal in this draft. His on-ball defense is as good as anyone in the league, and his rim attacking ability has improved steadily along with his deep shot. I think he will remain an excellent backup to Booker. The 31st pick was Eli Akobo, a Euro point guard who excels with his speed and decent playmaking. I am not really a fan of Akobo, but the team to this day has held on to him, and I trust the new general manager James Jones. So Akobo will either put it all together soon, or hopefully he can be dealt for something useful. The 46th pick, meanwhile, was useful. This pick was dealt to the Suns in a trade mentioned earlier, DeAnthony Melton. Though Melton's time with the Suns was brief, I really liked his game. He is a true point guard who makes his worth as a defensive hound. I strongly disagree with the team's decision to lump him into the Josh Jackson deal to Memphis, but at the very least the team did receive Javon Carter, who does a lot of the same things Melton did, but also has a better 3-point shot. The last pick was laughably awful. Ryan McDonough went out with a bang before being fired. Instead of taking either of the 19-year-olds, Kostas Antetokounmpo or LiAngelo Ball, for reasons of obviously filling out the G League stadium and potentially swaying their better brothers to come to Arizona, they instead chose to use the 59th overall pick on the 25-year-old George King. This was dumb. King is a fine player, but he is not an NBA talent, nor will he ever be. King played 1 game for 6 minutes. He basically made a fat salary to put up 15 points a game in the G League for a year. Stupid business management. Apart from the King pick, this was a really good draft. I give it a B. And finally, we reach 2019, the most recent draft as of this video being published. The Suns did not keep either of the 2 picks this year. Instead, they traded the 6th pick of Jarrett Culver and the 32nd pick of KZ Okpala to Minnesota. In return, they claimed the Croatian role-playing forward Dario Saric and the rookie 11th overall pick Cameron Johnson. Johnson had a slow start to the season. Many people claimed he was far too safe a pick in the lottery at 23 years old. But me and the Suns have been very happy. He shoots threes really stinking well, 39%, and his rim attacking ability is surprisingly strong. I see him as a perfect backup to Kelly Oubre. The team also eventually ended up with the rights to the 24th overall pick, Ty Jerome. I do not mean to be rude, but Jerome does not look like an NBA player. He is not very athletic, cannot shoot, and plays very timidly. But you never know, he may turn it around next season if the team decides they want to bring him back. The last player worth mentioning today is Jalen Lecque, who though was undrafted, it was actually a strategic decision as the team wanted to lock him up long term, but did not want to waste a first round pick on him. Lecque, at 19 years old, barely played this year, but is an extreme athlete who showed flashes in the G League, so there are reasons to remain optimistic as he continues to develop. Though this is a very early grade, I give this draft a C. So there you have it, the draft history of the Phoenix Suns over the past 10 years. I've enjoyed watching it all and I look forward to seeing what comes in the future. Thank you guys for watching this far, it really does mean a lot to me. Please comment, like, and subscribe. I will see you all next time.